With Nikki Cross winning the 24/7 title and then attempting to throw it in a trash can last month, Fightful would give an update on the creative plans for the belt. The 24/7 title hadn't been featured for quite some time before WWE effectively retired it. Since Triple H's regime took control of WWE, the 24/7 wasn't just put on the back burner. It was taken off the stove altogether. The title hadn't changed hands on television at all for the first 3 months of the new regime, but it had still been used. The title had still been used on numerous house shows despite not being on television at all. There have been several title changes, with one hotspot leading to a referee winning the title before it is eventually won back by Dana Brooke. A WWE source said that the title was almost never mentioned in a creative sense, but allowed for some fun moments for live event shows. The future of the title seems to be up in the air, and it wasn't something that we heard Triple H ever talk about. Dana Brooke had been competing on WWE main event fairly regularly and wearing the championship to the ring, while being announced as the champion. However, she wasn't booked in title defenses on the show, and there weren't been the traditional 24/7 chase elements before losing the title to Nikki Cross. When it comes to The Rock appearing at the 2023 Royal Rumble, Ringside News reported that we reached out to confirm The Rock's Royal Rumble status. A tenured member of the team told us that there is no status update on The Rock. At this time, discussions are still going on, but nothing is settled. There are ideas for Rock in Rumble, ideas for Rock not in Rumble, ideas for Rock to show up elsewhere besides the Rumble. Right now, nothing is etched in stone until a deal is reached. Talking about how Triple H called to check up on him following the loss of his son, Kevin Nash said on his Click This podcast, "Paul called me. Triple H called me, and his second sentence out of his mouth was, 'You're not going to do anything crazy, are you?' I think they knew how close, how much that was my life. The last thing I'll do is leave my wife alone. This doesn't hurt," he said, referring to recording the podcast. "Having something to do on Wednesday doesn't hurt, especially when I look across, and this is something we did." Asked how bad apples have been dealt with in the AEW locker room, Colt Cabana told the Work of Wrestling podcast that, "As you say that, I'm not even thinking about present day. I'm thinking about when the Ring of Honor locker room was so tight, or even my developmental days when they were tight. It's almost like the group of people who form this unit will kind of band together and almost get stronger when they are against one specific thing. It almost makes the locker room even stronger to then ship up or shape out, whatever the term is, shape up or ship out. When a bad apple or someone rotten comes into your locker room, the locker room gets together, gets strong, and they kind of give ultimatums almost. Maybe not actual ultimatums, but that person or those people will kind of be alienated, and eventually information of why that alienation is there will come. And then they have a choice to do nothing about it, do something about it, or anything in between. It's up to them. Usually it tends to work itself out. These people become friends, and years later you joke about what idiots they were and you tell them, they admit it, and that's the long-term relationship of a wrestling locker room. On Keeping It 100, former WCW star Conan gave new details regarding what led to the altercation between CM Punk and the Elite after All Out, saying, "So this all started because Hangman Page felt that Punk got Colt Cabana fired. Punk denied it. I already told you my conversation with Cabana, so I believe Cabana. Tony denied it, but a lot of the boys were bitter that he did that. That's what started everything between them. Then I guess Page went to something in Chicago or some Comic-Con. You know, they're all like comic nerds. They asked him, who does Page go to advice for? He said that he doesn't really listen to a lot of people. Now Punk hasn't been in the business for 7 years, so he doesn't know like Page and the Young Bucks. He doesn't know about them. I was told that he came back and he was giving everybody advice, but there were some people that were like, I think Punk doesn't know that we're stars and made it on her own. And some people weren't listening to him, and that rubbed him the wrong way. The day that they did that thing on TV, Tony Khan had no clue what he was going to say, and once he started talking, Tony didn't know what to do. He was like most of us, like, what is going on? So he got ambushed. I didn't know this until today, but remember when Chris Jericho went to the table at the media scrum? He was supposed to show up with the Young Bucks. He whispered into Tony's ear what just happened, much like the guy who told George Bush 9/11 was going down, and like Bush, Tony did nothing. They commended Chris, who obviously is a shark in the dressing room and knows his way around. He's learned from the best for his professionalism and not adding to the fire. From what I understand, the Young Bucks never saw the interview. Somebody told them about it. When they told them about it, they went running to the dressing room with the these cops. Conan was asked if they were cops or the AEW security, and Conan said whichever one, and he wasn't sure as he didn't ask. They busted in there, and Punk thought he was going to get attacked, so he punched one of the Young Bucks. When he punched one of the Bucks, obviously his brother got involved, and Punk's trainer, Ace Steel, got on the Young Bucks' brother, and then Omega cross-faced him. When he cross-faced him, this guy bit him. I guess there was a dog in there, Punk's dog. He was in there, and Omega was trying to pick up the dog. He's seeing his friend getting beat up. They initially were only going to come in and say, hey, what the f? But Punk thought they were going to get attacked, so he defended himself. That's the story, and the rumor is he's signing with WWE. That would be massive. If he has a year left, well, they'll wait a year, I guess. One thing is, he doesn't have to wrestle. He's a legend now. He just shows up. What he did is legendary. Very few guys have done what he did. That's like stuff I did in Mexico. He's a legend. As AEW have debuted many stars in recent memory, president of the company Tony Khan spoke on the Battleground podcast about Shane Taylor's recent appearance on Rampage, noting that there are fans who have never seen Shane Taylor before, and that's okay. You get introduced to new faces all the time. When I was a young wrestling fan, that was one of the things I liked about WCW Nitro. I think it would be very ironic now that the same promoter, Eric Bischoff, would tell you you don't want to see these faces or introduce new people on TV because they were the ones who did that. A lot of times, these new faces read in a magazine I'd never seen before, and they would just walk out and wrestle on Nitro like it was perfectly natural, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I guess that's not acceptable anymore, even though it's much easier to access information on the internet than it was in 1996. You saw wrestlers coming in from all promotions in the 90s on Nitro. Wrestlers coming to TBS or TNT is nothing new. People complaining about it ad nauseum on the internet is certainly new. At the end of the day, you want to listen to what the fans are saying. Overall, there has been a positive reception to a lot of international wrestlers coming to AEW. Addressing the contract she signed with AEW, Renee Paquette told the Sports Media Podcast that I've got a multiple-year deal. I have a 3-year deal with AEW, 3 years as talent and 3-year producer contract. I have 2 different contracts. I would love for that role to evolve. The thing with AEW is it is a wrestling company. It is a matches-heavy show. It's not necessarily about the broadcast in the way that WWE was. It's about great matches and showcasing talent in a different way. I love doing interviews and backstage interviews, especially working with younger talent that maybe has not been in that kind of situation before. There's so many people that I'm dying to do proper sit-down interviews with. I want to spend time with somebody and really unpeel those layers and figure out who some of these characters to push stories forward and give context to fans as to some of these wrestlers are. Even though some of these wrestlers are world-renowned stars, if you're a casual fan, you might not know who they are. I would love to provide more context in who they are. To do that on the television side is something I would love to do, as well as finding other ways to expand my role throughout the show. I have a couple ideas of things I want to do, and I'm hoping to have those conversations and maybe execute those things in the new year. I do think I bring a lot more value than just I could do backstage interviews in my sleep. That's somewhere I would love to put on more of my producer hat and help get someone else brushed up to doing backstage interviews in their fullest capacity, whether on the wrestling or broadcasting side. To look at it from a different perspective is something I enjoy. Reviewing the match between Dax Harwood and Bryan, Danielson, Jim Cornette criticized AEW for holding FTR back. Once in a blue moon, they have a tag team match, but most of the time in AEW, it's 6-man or an 8-man or pre-taped interview. They have all their great tag team matches in other companies somewhere else in the world. They have every other promotion's tag team title that means something in those companies, but are completely meaningless in AEW for some reason. And the apologists are still acting like this is not intentional, that anybody could be so stupid, and people are still trying to say they're not being held down on purpose. When talking on his podcast about those that look like they are on performance-enhancing drugs, Joe Rogan brought up The Rock as he said, "The Rock should come clean right now. He should make a video in response to the Liver King video. I need to talk to you because The Rock's been lying. There's not a chance in hell he's clean. Not a chance in hell. As big as The Rock is at 50, he's so massive, and he's so different than he was when he was 30. There's a responsibility you have to people who are listening to you. If you don't want to talk about it, that's one thing. But if you do talk about it, there's a responsibility you have to people listening to you, and I think you have to be honest about it, which is why I'm honest about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking hormone replacement." With him undergoing surgery to repair a torn pectoral muscle, Andrade would post an update 3 weeks following the operation. Andrade would also take to Twitter to post a video of the match he got injured in as he wrote, "I was injured but always professional. I finished the match. The most beautiful thing is to listen to the universe of fans and get up." With her criticized for being stiff and dangerous during a match against Jody Threat back in October, Athena pointed out what she considers to be a double standard in pro wrestling, telling Busted Open Radio, "Because I feel like it. Sometimes nice guys finish last. Sometimes you get frustrated and it's hard because you're trying to find an opportunity to not get lost in the shuffle because at AEW, there's so many talented women just across the board and it's like, what can you do to stand out? You're asking questions like, why am I stuck in this position? Why is this happening to me? Am I not good? Finally, you have to just say F it. That's basically what I've done. I'm going to do what I do best. For 10 years before I signed to WWE, I was probably one of the most notorious heels. I worked my entire indie career as the bad guy. I even got the nickname the American Joshi because of my hard-hitting style. People forgot about that. Through my entire TV career, it's something I always wanted to get back to. The girls can hit just as hard as the guys. I have to sit there and see Jon Moxley and Jericho and Yuta, all of these guys hit the tar out of each other. I guarantee you, if I was a man, there wouldn't be as much backlash or anything about that. It's all these old, bloated farts that want to sit there and tell us we need to look pretty. They complain when it's a dance, they complain when we hit hard. Get over it. We're out here to be just as good as the guys. We give it our all and put in all this time and effort to hone our craft, and I feel we're underappreciated when we do things like that. With Austin Theory and Mustafa Ali having a scary botch take place during their match on Raw this week, Fightful would provide more details, writing regarding the top rope Frankensteiner botch. We're told that it happened because Theory didn't hold on to Ali. The idea was for Theory to block the move and lift Ali up into a powerbomb. From there, Ali was supposed to counter that move back into the Rana. It was Ali that called for the ref to check on Theory, and Ali called the audible for the satellite DDT. Theory was also very apologetic backstage for the slip up, but there was no heat between the two. Backstage sources indicated that Theory was very apologetic for the spot afterwards. As Matt Riddle was destroyed by Solo Sikoa and stretchered out of the arena on Raw, it seems he will be out of action, as Bryan Alvarez said on Wrestling Observer Live. It looks like Riddle is out. I don't know if it's a legitimate injury and they're writing him off. He wrestled a match, so it must not be that bad. I don't know what's happening, but Riddle appears to be gone for the time being. Also on his podcast, Jim Ross spoke about the Vince McMahon hush money scandal and John Laurinaitis' involvement in it, saying, "I had a hard time as time went on trusting Laurinaitis. That's sad to say. I hired him. I gave him a job when he needed it. I don't think he treated me quite right. He just wanted to show Vince that he was a better manager than JR and all these things. So now his ass is without a job and he deserves the misery that he's living in, that I perceive that he's living in, and I didn't like how he treated me." With SmackDown being on FS1 and seeing a dip in their ratings, Jim Cornette criticized WWE for this, saying on his podcast, "So Fox didn't air SmackDown because of the World Soccer Cup or whatever. They threw their hands up and they said just go. We're not even gonna try." Do you want to hear what the matches on SmackDown were? I didn't watch it. I read the recap to determine whether I should and quickly got the answer to that. But would you like to just hear what the matches were? Okay, Sheamus wrestled Sami Zayn, and that alone might not have been bad. And the Bloodline actually helped Sami win this. So Sami beats Sheamus. So boy howdy, you didn't see that coming, but there was no Roman Reigns. There was no Paul Heyman because it wasn't network TV and they didn't bring out all the big guns. And to honestly spend 2 hours of my life to watch Sheamus versus Sami, meh. Because the rest of the program, Shayna Baszler versus Emma, a non-title match between Kofi Kingston and Gunther, and again, I love Gunther. I love to watch Gunther, but against Kofi Kingston? And the main event apparently, or the match they put in the main event spot, was Pablo Escobar against Ricochet. That was the show. If I was Tony Khan right now, I'd be screaming. I'd be screaming, "You a-hole wrestlers I've signed, you can't get your together and get along with each other and stop trying to get out of my contracts long enough to beat a company in a promotional war that's not even trying anymore." SmackDown main event Pablo Escobar and Ricochet, one of 3 all-star matches on a 2-hour program. If I had turned that into Vince McMahon 25 years ago, he'd have fired me. Talking about his former Shield faction mate, Seth Rollins revealed to the Metro that obviously none of us are as close as we were, and we may never be as close as we were during those first 2 years. Everyone's off doing their own thing. We're all on separate shows. Roman and I see each other occasionally at the pay-per-views if he's on those, and neither of us see Mox ever. He's busy doing his own thing, whether it's AEW or GCW or New Japan, wherever he wants to show up. Obviously, the bond isn't as close, but it will always exist in the same way that the Horsemen are always going to be the Horsemen. The NWO are always going to be the NWO. The Shield has that type of aura about it. There's always going to be a connection there, no matter what happens or which directions we go. Speaking about plans for him to return to WWE, Carlito noted during his appearance for KNS WrestleFest that I was supposed to do the Legends Night a couple of weeks before that, and then they canceled me and said, "No, we'd rather have you in the Rumble." Yeah, it was great. What sucked was people not being there. People don't even know if I exist now. So yeah, it would have been cool to be in front of a WWE crowd again, but other than that, it was pretty fun. Explaining the botched DDT that took place in her match against SHOTZI Blackheart at Survivor Series, Ronda Rousey noted during her stream that you ever wake up from a deep sleep and think of a cringe moment in your life, and you lay awake in bed. Well, I had one of those this morning. I woke up at 6:30 this morning and I was like, oh god, that DDT on the apron. So let me explain what happened. I actually pitched that spot because I loved that SHOTZI does that, but we couldn't practice it in the ring because the ropes were too loose. And then we couldn't practice it when we got to the arena because there were these big cages. So everybody was like, I've taken DDTs before, but I've never helped anyone over the floor. So they were like, okay, you gotta have your hand here on her leg, another hand on her hip, and you're gonna guide her over. And everyone was so focused on, gotta guide her over, guide her to the floor, that it was literally all that was on my mind when it happened. And so when I was like, guide her, and when she was down, I was like, oh, just go to where you're supposed to go. So yeah, I messed it up because I was so concerned with keeping somebody safe. And a lot of times when you see me doing something the first time, it's the first time I ever did it. It's the first time I ever did it. I was really concerned with keeping SHOTZI safe, and I made it look bad. And you know what? I'm sorry, okay? Shoot me. Apparently, I deserve to be fired or burned. It reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they were like, burn her. There weren't calls to fire anybody when Madcap Moss and Big E were spiked on their heads, and they were like, burn her anyway. I'm so sorry that I was so concerned with keeping someone safe that it made the bump look bad. With Ric Flair previously criticizing Eric Bischoff and calling him arrogant, Conrad Thompson revealed to Wrestling Inc. that this had to do with Bischoff's comments about Flair on ESPN's 30 for 30 documentary. When I asked Eric about it, he didn't remember what he said in the documentary. Rick said on the podcast that Eric said something on the documentary that when he saw it back, pissed him off. And that's not the first time that's happened. When Rick saw 30 for 30, the ESPN documentary from 5 years ago or whatever it was, he was pretty off about that too, with what some folks had to say. And so a few people got some nasty text messages because nobody wants to see or hear or read someone that they know, like, and care about say something that was maybe less than flattering. Reporting the reason for the disappearance of Miro from AEW television, Fightful said, after Miro's absences, many fans have wondered where he's been. After inquiring with all Elite Wrestling sources, it was reiterated to us that Miro is and has been completely healthy and wanting to actively compete. However, we're told that creative simply hasn't been presented for him. Miro last appeared at AEW All Out, and before that, Forbidden Door. While it looked like he was back to being figured in creatively during the summer, that hasn't been the case, and he's only wrestled 4 matches in all of 2022, all between June 1st and September 4th. We're told that there were plans to have creative conversations, but that those haven't happened as of yet. Those that we've spoken to say that Miro is eager to return to the ring. Touching on her dislocated shoulder from SummerSlam this year, Becky Lynch mentioned that it still does not feel right, telling The Verge it felt amazing to be out in front of the crowd again and how electric that was in such a wild capacity as War Games. That's a match that I've never done before, and it's a very daunting match. You've got 2 rings, you've got a giant cage, and anything goes. Truth be told, my shoulder still isn't feeling right. So to say I was nervous is probably a bit of an understatement, but once you get out there, once you get in front of the crowd and you feel that energy, then you forget everything else. There's not another feeling like it. During that previously mentioned interview with Wrestling Inc., Conrad Thompson would shoot down rumors of the Nature Boy returning to WWE as an entrant in the Royal Rumble. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's clickbait. Anybody who actually listens to the podcast knows that he said that tongue-in-cheek. Even when he talked about the Rumble, he's like, somebody reported that I'm going to be at the Rumble. I'm not. I'm going to be at the 30th anniversary Raw. I'm going to be in San Antonio. I'm doing a signing for Fitterman, and I'll bring my gear. I'll bring my robe. Hell yeah, I'll be number 30. It's a joke. It's not serious. He's not really going to be in the Rumble, but I know that gets people talking and it gets people buzzing. But the reality is Rick's not going to wrestle again. With him not having been seen in AEW since his post-all-out press scrum appearance, CM Punk would post a throwback picture on social media from his days in WWE, as Luke Gallows, who was then known as Festus, can be seen on the Titantron in the background. It remains to be seen what is next for Punk, as he could have his contract bought out by AEW. As Braun Strowman previously went on Twitter after his performance at Crown Jewel and took a shot at high-flying wrestlers, Ricochet responded to this while speaking on After the Bell. I don't really put too much thought into it. Even Braun, back when he said those things like, he's still my friend, I just put a little post to call him out, but we're still cool. But honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like I've heard it so much, and I feel like coming up in the business, I heard so much that I'm never going to make it to WWE. It's the land of the giants. You're never going to make it. It's almost like white noise now. It's almost just like TV static. With it previously reported that there are no plans for Miro in AEW, it's been added by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Fightful reported that Miro was healthy and not doing acting and was not being used because there was no creative idea for him. The first part is accurate. The second part is very much not. He isn't injured and he is available. Ideas were presented for him in September for an angle that would go through Full Gear, but he wasn't down with them. So rather than put him on TV for no purpose, they were waiting for him to agree to creative. He's expected to be back soon, and the sides have been talking. When it comes to a pro wrestling comeback for a WWE Hall of Famer, Rick Ucchino reported that Goldberg just told Max Kellerman that he will wrestle again at some point. Says he doesn't want to go out losing to Roman Reigns. With former WWE star John Morrison set to make a debut for a pro wrestling promotion, PW Insider said, for the first time in over 4 years, John Hennigan, whose surnames also include Morrison, Mundo, and Impact, will bring both substance and style when he steps into the ring on January 7th, competing under the name Johnny Fusion for MLW. It was previously reported that Sasha Banks is expected to be at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom 17 event on January 4th, and this has some thinking she could make her debut for AEW in the future. It was reported that Fightful asked about Mercedes' status with WWE after the heavy promotion of her appearing on USA Network's Barmageddon. Nobody that we inquired with at WWE had heard any change or update on her status, or were at least willing to say as much. However, several AEW talent were excited about the possibility of her coming in. One source quickly agreed they thought that having Sasha Banks on their show weekly is another anchor for their women's division, something that could kickstart interest in it, and feel would significantly help viewership. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.